So I think it can, it's not as simple as saying just be cheerful
That
and everyone
employee
will.
did a really bad job of emotional mirroring. You were very grumpy, and
Yeah.
they didn't mirror you.
And I wasn't in a bad mood. I was just, I was like, come on.
Hi, I'm Matt Egol, the host of the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for leaders looking to drive impact by focusing on customer experience and culture together. I'm excited to be here today with Marty Kihn. He's worked across the whole marketing and advertising ecosystem, and we actually worked together many years ago at Booz and Company, and he's since had roles not just in consulting, but in the agency research and tech side, and he's now the SVP Strategy for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And Marty's also a four-time author of multiple best-selling books, and we'll talk some more about his latest book during the episode as well. Welcome, Marty.
That's great to be here, Matt, and good to see you again.
So, Marty, you've, as I mentioned, been a four times best-selling author. I'm really looking forward to reviewing your latest book when it comes out in a few weeks in November, Customer 360: How Data, AI, and Trust Change Everything. What inspired you to write the book?
Well, I did a book about 2 or 3 years ago called Customer Data Platforms. That was a very simple title, but it basically explains the content. It was all about customer data platforms. I wrote it with my friend Chris O'Hara, also a Salesforce person, and it was really about the category. And the CDP is a very interesting category. I mean, it came out of nowhere essentially about 2013, 2014. And then 2016, 2017 became very big, and mostly retailers were asking for it. It's a way to create a single view of your customer across different data sources. And it was very useful, and it grew extremely quickly. And the Salesforce journey with it is also, we can talk about that, I guess, it's fascinating. But it took off in a way that other MarTech categories that I've observed have not since probably the days of CRM has something been so significant. And so the CDP book came out, and there was a need to update it because the CDP as a category has changed over the last 3 years. And I think it's just expanded to the point where it's not so much about marketing anymore, although marketers are probably the primary users still, but it's about CX, the title of your podcast. It's about customer experience end to end, and it's about marketing and service working together, and service and loyalty and e-commerce, and then commerce and the sales team on the B2B context. And so really end-to-end CX, and that's hard to do. I mean, it's hard enough to get your marketing game in order, but to get the entire customer experience from end to end, to have a customer feel like they're talking to the same company, and they're handed off to the call center, they don't have to repeat themselves and all of that stuff. Very, very difficult to pull off. But I think the CDP is playing a big role in that. And so that's what this new book is about, as well as incorporating, the advances in AI that we're all familiar with, and then things like trust and governance and permission and things, important topics like that.
What you're hitting on, Marty, is that, you know, the customer data platform, the CDP, is a lot more than just a place to kind of deal with the potential impact of cookie deprecation, right? It's not just about advertising and building a view of your customer. It's actually really about enabling a more data-driven approach to marketing, where you're able to build insights from the upper part of the funnel all the way through the full experience and have journey orchestration.
Yeah, it is. I mean, a cookie, in the beginning, people thought, well, CDP is kind of like a DMP, only it's first party data. That's not true. Actually, CDP is more in common with CRM. It has more in common with what we might call direct marketing, so email databases in the old days, and it's a database essentially. It's plumbing. DMP was very ad tech focused and extremely reliant on third party cookie, and very useful in its day. But now, probably only 2% of the web is going to be cookied, even if Google keeps the cookie, which we don't know. But at any rate, the DMP days, has passed, and CDP's day is here. But you can be used for advertising, but it's in a very different way. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to talk about combining emotion and analytics, and the ability to build real insights in your customers with data where you can start measuring and experimenting. And what you're highlighting is the CDP is the enabler. If you don't actually have data, how do you build a view of the customer lifetime value? How do you build a view of what happened along the journey when you change things? You can, unless you have data.
Well, you can't really do anything without data. I mean, companies are realizing this now because it was possible in the recent past to be, I think, kind of lazy and to rely on external data, third-party data, maybe audiences you bought from somebody and you weren't exactly sure where they came from. They seem to work, and that's not possible anymore. There's a lot of reasons for it, not just regulations, but consumer attitudes to data collection, people's awareness of their information, the ability to share data between systems. So I think companies are very focused on first party data, capturing it with consent, having the proper permissions. And all of that is the bedrock, the foundation for marketing, for service, for sales, everything that a company needs to do. And increasingly going forward, advertising as well, built off first party data.
So you talked briefly in your kind of intro of the book just now about AI and how it's playing a role in the way you use the CDP and the way you analyze the data, create the data. And I'd love to get your thoughts about, you know, where are advancing in AI having the most impact, and how is the Salesforce Marketing Cloud, helping them take advantage of that?
Well, we just had, as we speak, recently, we had our big event in San Francisco, Dreamforce. And the theme of Dreamforce was something called Agent Force. And I mean, Salesforce good at marketing and events. So Agent Force, what is that? It's sort of AI agents, but it's the next generation, the next version of copilots. We're all familiar with copilots, so it would be sort of like a screen next to what you're trying to do. And it's a better version of search, I guess, more intelligent version of search using large language models. But the agents are like so even beyond that, where you can have a system that where you don't really need to do rules if this then that. It can do some light decisioning, but more importantly, it can determine the context of what you're trying to ask. So you don't have to literally. It's not as rule bad. When rules are required, people are required to do a lot of manual work. You have to set up rules. But in this new world, based on advancements, incredible advancements, frankly, with large language models, external models. There can be kind of context, semantics, understanding of what you're trying to get at, like what your intent is as the user of the software. So I think that is the most exciting part of what we're calling AI. AI's been around a long time, but the newer type of AI or generative AI and the semantic search has made software easier to use already. It's already we're already in a situation where, for instance, using Salesforce Data Cloud, you don't even need to know SQL, and you can do good, sophisticated segmentation. In the past, you would have to write a complicated SQL query to pull a segment, and they can get nested and extremely, you have to be a power user, and it would take years to master that skill. But now you can describe in English a segment, people in the Northeast who have these characteristics, and behind the scenes, the machine will write the SQL, and you can look at it if you want to, but you don't need to know it. And so you're basically just speaking to the software. It's a big advancement. You have to be careful. I mean, there are a lot of there's a lot of guidelines around how to do the right prompting, as we all know. And prompting is not exactly the same as English or French or whatever. It is a version of computer code. It's just a lot easier than it used to be.
I'd love to unpack a couple things. You said a few really important, insightful things that I want to share some perspective with the audience and help unpack it for a minute with them. One was really the importance of moving beyond more rigid if then approaches to how you do things, where the AI has a lot more context and can actually allow you to, in effect, maximize the area under the curve by doing more things at once, right? That's one thing that AI does that we can dive into a little bit more about the implications of that. The other is really the impact of low code. And like Salesforce is one of the leading low code platforms, which is what you see is what you get, drag and drop, simple, intuitive approaches where you can build experiences on top of Salesforce much faster than you could in many other platforms. It's the leading low code platform out there. And you're highlighting, and actually, when I was at PwC, a lot of the digital experiences we created, we could do them in like one third the time because we built them on platforms like Salesforce. So this is getting supercharged now because of the AI that you can do this even better than you could before. So I think those were two really important themes that you hit on as the kind of you can do more things. There's more variety now than rigid if then, and the ability to kind of try things rapidly with low code.
You can, and the idea of agents, I mean, agents are we're at the early stages, I think, of agents, and it's not only Salesforce is talking about them. I think many large software companies talk about agents now. But an agent is really just something that you build to perform. One builds to perform a task, and in the keynote at the Dreamforce, as an example, there was a service use case. So it's something like, people call an agent, so they call a virtual agent. That's very common now. So you have a conversation with an agent, and there were some issues with a return, and basically they were trying to get to the point where could they return it to the store, or would they have to, would the agent have to stop at a certain point and say, well, you have to call your store to see if you can return it to your store. You can create, if you give access to the right data. So, for instance, store inventory, store location data to the agent, the software agent, it can take it that next step. It can say, actually, let me check, store hours, store location, is the inventory available? So that the agent can go all the way through based on the availability of the data. And that's something that is, it's just a task that you created. So you created an agent that has the ability to do this as one example. And there'll be all these kind of little tasks like that are manual, that are routine, that are annoying for people that you can agentize if you give it access to data. Yeah.
What we would do with low code platforms and technology is your team internally, your tech team or your consultant would come in and prioritize a whole bunch of use cases and say, let's burn through the top 50 use cases and automate them, like commonly asked questions or the things that take, and then you automate them and you simplify them. And then you keep doing that. Now with AI and the advances now, it becomes conversational and you don't even have to have the tech team go build the use cases out. You just talk with the right, if you just have to learn how to write the right prompts.
Right. Yeah. And it can be focused on outcomes. So you say, all right, our goal here is to have this service calls resolved as quickly as possible with most positive outcome, something like that. And all of the thinking that's done by these agents can be in service of that. So like, all right, how do I minimize the time required? And how do I maximize, the potential for an outcome? And it can learn. It can make mistakes and learn from what it's done in the past and improve. So that feedback loop is very important.
So if folks listening want to check out some more episodes that touch on this theme, just to remind them who haven't seen them already, you could see my episodes with Rex Briggs, who's the chief AI officer at Claritas, who's doing things with agents also. And you can also check out my episode with Amaresh Tripathi, who used to be a partner with me at PwC. He led the analytics practice, and he has a really cool startup company called Oxo AI, which does copilots. So those are other conversations that'll give you a little bit more flavor of some of the things Marty and I are talking about. Of course, like and subscribe to the podcast so that you can find other future episodes that talk about similar topics. So I think those are really cool. Marty, on the other one we were talking about was segmentation in AI, and love to get your thoughts more about like, do you mean just like creating smaller thin slice segments and just testing and learning using the platform, or did you have something else in mind in terms of how you're leveraging the technology?
I think when the CDP appeared, this was actually kind of funny because I came to Salesforce 6 years ago or so, and there was a question at that time: does Salesforce have a CDP already? Do we need to acquire one? Salesforce very inquisitive, and there was a whole consulting exercise actually that I was part of, which was build, buy, acquire CDP. And CRMs, Salesforce ticker symbol, CRM, customer relationship management, and the C is customer. So they're like, well, maybe we already have one. Then maybe this is something we don't need to worry about. So the net result of all of that was no, we don't have it. It's new. It's at B2C scale, so it has to be cloud essentially. And you have to if you have 100 million profiles, your retailer, this technology has to support that. So that's not typical B2B CRM scale. So there was a lot that had to be built, but basically the use case was, we went to, it was in the marketing suite. We went to marketers and we said, all right, do you want a single view of your customer based on data from different sources? And basically everybody said, yes, of course we do. That's a stupid, silly question. Why would you even ask me that? So yes, okay. And the second question is, say you magically disappeared. You had a single view of your customer. What would you do with it? And it's funny how many people had kind of an awkward pause at that moment. Maybe it was too much to dream about, but they weren't exactly sure. They're like, let me think about this. So, but if you give people time to think, it would always end up with an analytics use case. Like it was always, I'll do better segmentation. I'll have more information about my customers, so I'll be more insightful in my predictive modeling using machine learning, like next best offer, next best action. And that's true. All of that's true. I mean, if you have more data around customers, you can do better. And by better, I don't mean necessarily more segments, but um, more useful segments that are based on what you want your outcome to be. And testing as well. You can determine if there's some edge cases in your segments. If someone belongs to one segment or another, you can just try and see and learning from that loop. And I think the complexity of the modeling that's done around segmentation has improved over time. So it's two things. It's the availability and organization of data, which is the most important. And because these machine learning models have been around for a while, but if you improve the data, you're going to improve the outcome. And then the second thing is around if you're using things like AI, it can come up with segments that are not intuitive, that are puzzling sometimes. You're not exactly sure why they're different segments. But and you can ask the model, "Well, how did you come up with this?" And it will tell you the drivers of the segment. But they're better, they're kind of more powerful. So I think that ability improves over time.
Often, companies or people in companies make a distinction between personas and segments, where a persona is viewed as more of a design thinking tool to kind of tell a fun story about a stylized set of customers, right? And then you get at their motivations, their goals, what they like to do, and it brings them to life for people and helps you. Now, good personas are based on insights, right? Whether it's in advertising or shopper marketing or e-commerce or loyalty, whatever the use case is that you're using your personas. Now, segments are meant to be more analytically driven approaches to really drive optimization against, right? Of different business decisions. I actually like to think that you confuse the two. I talked about emotions and analytics, that if your personas can't be used as segments, what's the point? If you can't actually turn them into segments, then you can't activate them at scale. And if your segments don't have some of the elements of personas, then you don't get at the emotion that drives human behavior. So I'd love to get your thoughts on, like, which camp are you in? Do you think personas and segments go together, or you think they're two different things?
Well, I have thought about this because I worked at Digitas. I was at an agency for years doing measurement, basically, so coming up with segments. And then I went to Gartner as a research, I basically industry analyst around MarTech. And I was asked to define, and I wrote a paper on this. What's the difference between a segment and a persona? And coming out of the agency space, I said, well, the way we did it there was we came up with segments and then built a persona on top of it. And the purpose of the persona, each segment would have a potentially a different persona. The purpose of the persona was to help the creative team, essentially, who is building the assets to try to communicate with the segment. So it's the humanization of a segment. And ad agencies still do this. They'll come up with a picture and a life story of the segment, but it just makes it real. And I think that the purpose, at least, there's a debate on what's persona, what isn't. But my opinion is that the persona is the bridge between the cold data, which is cold and machines love it, but people don't, and then the actual use of that segment in the world of people. So it's a bridge between, the data and then the human element, as you said.
Just like the marketing funnels getting compressed now, that like, upper funnel versus lower funnel, sometimes it can be both, right? Like you can compress the funnel. Like I just did a podcast with Todd Unger, who's the CXO of the American Medical Association, but he has a background in digital product and marketing and agency and P&G. So very multidisciplinary talent stack. And he talks about the compression of the tornado funnel, like the whole funnel is compressed. And I, it's not always 10 seconds or less, but it can often be compressed where is it middle or is it upper? Is it lower? Where does it start? Where does it end? And what you're highlighting is a similar phenomenon. You can layer personas on top of segments, but you can actually do them together. And what I think is happening now with this, with the digital and the data, with platforms actually like Salesforce, is your experience and your operational data. You have far more data signals that you can map to your personas. And if you actually turn your personas into actionable segments, then you can drive experiments against your personas. They're not like a once and done exercise.
Yeah, and in fact, the availability of data is a really good point, Matt, that you brought up. The drivers of behavior are not what we were taught, 15 years ago. It was, in the media space, you had to buy against demographics, and it would be gender and maybe location if you were lucky. So you had
Marty
a
and I
few.
both worked in the media practice at Booz, so we were there. We had a front row
Yeah.
seat, and when the internet was impacting the media world.
Yeah, exactly. But these were blunt parameter, and it's the best we had at the time. So you had to, you're saying, all right, it's really important what age someone is and what gender. But in fact, drivers of behavior are things like how long do I have to make the decision? What kind of mood am I in? Am I in the office, or am I, on the go? These are, am I looking at a tiny little device, or am I actually looking at a nice big screen? All these things can inform your decision. Am I actively in the market at that moment, or am I just kind of browsing and not really engaged? All these things inform the purchase decision. They're more important actually than whether I'm 39 or 45, or whether I male or female, even in many cases. So the drivers, but that data just wasn't available. But now, oftentimes it is. You can personalize when someone's on a site in that session using Salesforce products if you want. CDP can have real time data streaming into it off of your phone, for instance. And so, and time of day is known often. So, a lot of those signals now are available to be used in things like segmentation.
Well, in the customer data platform in the CDP, you get a lot of the operational data signals can get captured. I like to think of these as like digital footprints on the journey. There's all these digital footprints on the journey that if you're paying attention and architect your MarTech ad tech stack the right way, you actually capture these data signals into your customer data platform, and you can combine them now with other data signals, which there's another use case of AI which is not fully exploited yet, which is to synthesize and summarize and predict. And that actually you can take the call logs, you can take the social media, the messaging, all this unstructured data now, and actually create synthetic scores that you combine with other structured data and use that to actually develop your personas and start optimizing things against microsegments within them.
Well, another area is around, it isn't discussed as much, but it's around permissioning and asking people for permission to use their data. And people are, it turns out, different in their attitudes toward sharing of data, and they're different in their attitudes toward the comfort level with which they will give permission, and actually what it would take to get permission from them. So what message, and it's not related to their generation necessarily. It's a psychological dimension. So you're trying to figure out if someone's a kind of a privacy obsessive, or they're kind of more free, and then how do you ask them to opt in? Because increasingly we have to ask people to opt in. And if that was known somehow based on signals, then you would have a much, you know, greater chance of getting someone to opt in to your messaging, which you want. So I think that's an area that will be developing over time, just trying to determine what segment someone would fall into and their attitude.
Play this back and make sure I'm tracking with you, Marty, that in the past, we used to rely on panel data to kind of, figure out which behavioral profiles people had, and then people use that to connect it to other behaviors like media consumption or category engagement or brand engagement. What you're highlighting is we don't have to have this long lead time and very thin data environment relying on a sample of people in a panel. We can actually observe their behavior and predict which profile they're in based on lookalike, right? Based on behavioral profiles. And we can observe this single and try and see whether it's predictive. And you get much more fast experimentation cycles this way.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the most valuable data is the data that is closest to that moment in time. It's not that people change a lot, but people's thought processes, particularly when they're engaging with the brand, are constantly changing, and there's a lot of input coming in, and so it's what's happening in the moment is the most useful. If I go to a site and I'm looking for a credit card, and I'm on a bank site, you can tell pretty quickly that's what I want, and you can actually tell if I'm in a hurry or not just based on the signals I'm giving you. And so why not make the whole session relevant to that desire that that person has, which they're telling you, pretty directly.
Well, and also like when if people rely on waiting for the signal from the customer survey, it's going to be a really long wait, and only 5 to 10% of the people are going to fill it out. And you're going to get partial data, often limited to what questions you asked, even if it's an open ended question. Yogi Berra, I've used this quote now multiple times on the podcast. He said, "You observe a lot by watching," right? And what you're highlighting is there's a lot of data if we want to watch and learn from it that we can make more effective decisioning and analytically driven approaches that are more in the moment versus this lag time of like 3 to 6 months.
I think in terms of Salesforce our customer data platform is called Data Cloud, uh, and it's the foundation for a lot of the AI work that we're doing around agents. So Data Cloud is right on the bottom. It's customer data, but basically the big areas of investment around Data Cloud now are one is making it faster, so incorporating real time signals. Customers have told us, and I think it's true that the more data they can capture in real time from customers with their consent, the more useful that is, and to be able to use it. So not just pull it into the Data Cloud, but be able to apply models to it, have some kind of an outcome, put someone in an audience, reach some kind of a decision based on faster signals. And the other areas, unstructured data you mentioned earlier. Unstructured data is, it's text and it's audio, video, could be contracts. Most data in most enterprises, I've been told on good authority, is unstructured to this day. Yeah, or you could say the English language is structured or language maybe so it's lightly structured, but basically not in rows and columns.
I've seen estimates like by Qualtrics and others that it's like 90% of the data is unstructured. And if you look at the growth rate of chatbots and messaging, of sending people text messages or in app, those are now growing faster than chat even, right? So like it's outstripping. It's just gonna grow as a percentage of the total rapidly.
It is, and it's very valuable data. I mean, think about call center logs that people call in. You can get a lot of insights off of that. Surveys that people have sent in, feedback on your site. A lot of that written feedback is just ignored. I can tell you from personal experience.
So Salesforce has a AI, as Einstein is as leading AI tools to mine a lot of unstructured data, and it has a listening platform, Salesforce Feedback Management. But you guys haven't made as big a push into connecting the experience and operational side. Is that an area you see will evolve more in the future, the connecting the unstructured to structured data inside the cloud?
Yeah, there is. It's in fact The latest release of the data cloud has something called vector database, and a vector database is basically a way to take unstructured data and to structure it quickly. So it does embeddings, and it creates a kind of a model of the data so that it can be searched. And that really, starting with text, I think images and video, audio is a little easier, but images and video are, coming, and they'll be unlocked soon. But the text part is where we're starting, and it's already available. You put it into vector database. It can be part of the data that's sitting within Data Cloud, which is more structured, customer data that's structured, and it can be the insights can be drawn. I mean, you can pull out, for instance, you mentioned uh, sentiment analysis from call center logs, and even topics, hot topics, things that a particular person is interested in based on what they've said to an agent or a salesperson on the B2B side. So all of that is now you can incorporate it into the profile, and it just makes the customer profile itself much richer. So I think unstructured is a big area of growth, and then the real time itself. But technically, these are coming very quickly. It's the same way these large language models develop very fast. The features keep rolling out, so the rate of change and the release cycle has sped up noticeably in the last couple of years.
So, you used the word culture earlier. It is in the name of the podcast as both CX and culture, as you pointed out. And also my own book, The CX and Culture Connection, has the same name as the podcast. I kept it simple so I could remember the names of both more easily. Um, what do you see as the role of culture in delivering a great customer experience?
It's something that we've actually studied at Salesforce. Look at what we call employee experience and then customer experience, and there's good data to show that they're closely related. In fact, happier employees or more productive employees and more engaged employees create happier and more productive, more engaged customers. It's sort of strange, but on the other hand, it's intuitive. If I think about the brands I like doing business with, it's because if I ever encounter anyone who's part of that organization, I like them. They seem like they're engaged, they're there. And there was a book, Built to Last, I think, or it might have been In Search of Excellence. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they talked about cult-like cultures, and it's essentially these organizations where people are extremely engaged in their work and they have a higher mission, and they have the happiest customers because they're actually creating an organization that everything that they do is infused with a certain spirit, a goal, what they're trying to do in the world. And it doesn't have to be altruism. It could be creating a product or something. But at any rate, customers pick up on that.
And there's a lot out there, whether it's like, you know, um, Jim Stengel's Grow and about, purpose-driven companies perform better, companies with stronger employee experiences perform better. Um, I want to push on this for a second because there's a distinction I want to make for the audience and get your reaction to it, which is one angle here is to say happy employee equals translates to happy customer because they show up with a better attitude and better, more emotionally engaged with the brand and with the customer. But a lot of the lens of that is on the HR lens of hire to retire with the employee experience. Really still in that HR lane about like the employee experience will then translate through to better CX because the employee is more engaged and there's lower turnover, right? That I think is a different point. It's true, by the way. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I don't think that's enough. You can actually focus directly on the EX CX intersection in how your employees show up with your customers and what are the behaviors of your employees. Culture is about behavior. What are the behaviors of your employees for how they interact with your customers? And you can focus explicitly on those behaviors of your employees with the customer. And in most cases, um, you can't have a completely digital experience without an employee engaging with your customer. So a lot of times the peak in the customer journey is actually because of the employee behavior delivering an emotionally engaging experience, which then drives a business outcome. which is distinct from a just happy employee delivers a happy customer. It's actually the way they behave delivers a happy customer.
There's no doubt. I mean, I think that what's lost a lot, uh, still, and probably even more than it used to be, is that customers are people and employees are people, and it is a human interaction. And, we both know what's going on. Customer is perfectly aware that the person on the other end of the line is trying to sell something, and the person trying to sell is perfectly aware that the customer on the other end of the line is, impatient or whatever they are. So it is a human interaction, and that needs to be acknowledged. While there's still a task getting accomplished here. I had an experience recently with a brand that's known for being happy, and I could tell I was engaging with the customer service, and I could tell that they had been coached to sound really, really happy the whole time, and it was extremely annoying to me, and it actually turned me off the branch. So I'm like, "This person really needs to calm down and stop being so happy because I'm really trying to get something done here." So I think it can, it's not as simple as saying, "Just be cheerful
That
and everyone
employee
will."
did a really bad job of emotional mirroring. You were very grumpy, and
Yeah.
they didn't mirror you.
And I wasn't in a bad mood. I was just, I was like, "Come on."
So yeah, you're highlighting the importance of the employee behavior, and I to connect it back to like the Martech Salesforce side of the world. I like to say there's direct and indirect. Direct is when the employee behavior, like the frontline employees in a Starbucks or Ritz Carlton or Disney theme park, those are direct employee behaviors that deliver the customer experience. Indirect are like the way they collaborate, the way they make decisions, the way they work in an agile approach. And what Salesforce is an enabler of the indirect. And potentially the direct, if you're designing an experience using the full Salesforce Cloud suite, you can design an experience that the salesperson, the agent, is using to deliver a better experience. But that is, so you see this indirect argument, and how Salesforce is a enabler of the indirect side of things, like experimentation and collaboration.
Yeah, and the mission of Salesforce is to help our customers connect to their customers. So it is in that sense indirect, that we're building tools that help other people connect to other people. I think with the advent of agents, it becomes even more interesting and potentially better because parts of the experience, the human-human experience, uh, can be mechanized, can be automated, and then the handoff will happen at a certain point where a human is required. So it is humans working with agents still. It's not a fully automated experience.
Well, and hopefully the bot will behave the right way,
Yeah,
and then
ideally, and the bot
also
can
the bot
learn,
will help the agent know what to do to behave the right way.
and bots don't get tired, which is good and they don't
Yeah.
have bad days. So
Well, Marty, when the book comes out in a couple weeks after this runs, I'm looking forward to. I've already ordered my copy, and I'm looking forward to writing a review of it that people can find on the What We Think page of JourneySpark's website, and I'll definitely promote that through all the social channels. Looking forward to kind of sharing my thoughts on that. And thanks for being on the show. If people want to learn more about you, or get in touch, is LinkedIn the best way, or are there things they should do to follow you on Speaking Circuit or other things?
yeah, I think for just following me on LinkedIn, it's Martin Kihn, MartinKihn is the best way. I update that and I try to put some thoughts up there. A lot of it's around CDP and data cloud, and a little bit on AI. I think AI is well covered elsewhere, so I like to focus on the data level.
Well, I know you've sparked a lot of great ideas for me. It's been a lot of fun having our conversation. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for asking, Matt. Good to see you.